Hello, I'm Laura Kalbag. I've been working in the tech industry for the last 7 years, primarily as a web designer and a front-end developer. First off, I was freelance, often working alongside larger teams, but for the last year or so I've been working for ind.ie, a tiny social enterprise creating free, open and independent alternatives to mainstream technologies. The biggest issue I see in attracting diversity to the tech industry isn't the pipeline, but the toxic environments that are at the end of the pipeline. Women might be introduced into the industry, but they're not likely to stay there if their work environment isn't sustainable. People sometimes speak about a poor perception of the tech industry, and while I know there are many wonderful places to work, I think the problem isn't so much the perception, but there are also places that genuinely aren't welcoming or comfortable if you're not a well-educated white man in your mid-20s to mid-30s. I'd love to see more organisations address this environmental problem, rather than expecting education and the community to feed them an infinite supply of eager, diverse candidates for them to chew up and spit out the other end. It might sound horrible, I might make it sound horrible, but of course these places are rarely outwardly and obviously sexist and discriminatory. One of the biggest problems is that women are expected to fit into a culture that's dominated by stereotypically male behaviour. If we don't change ourselves to fit in, we're assumed to be difficult or that we're not trying. If we take on the characteristics of that culture, we're told we're being aggressive or presumptuous. We're talked down to, we're constantly interrupted, and we're often the subject of sexual jokes and unwanted advances. So often these problems aren't caused by malicious people, but just by people who don't know any better. Society and the tech industry has allowed them to behave in this way without consequence. And of course we all have subconscious biases that usually support the status quo because we'll get less grief if we behave the same way as everybody else. The issues I've mentioned are prevalent in many male-dominated fields, but the technology really sets the tech industry apart. Technology isn't the cause of many problems, but in its nature, it tends to amplify underlying sociological issues. Our heavy use of technology for communication and the high value of social networks as tools in our industry means we're continually immersed in an environment of anonymous or physically distant discussion, where people can speak and behave in a way that's completely inappropriate for a professional environment. It's disheartening and alienating for a woman to receive feedback based on her physical appearance and perceived attractiveness when all she wants to do is good work. Where one or two small instances might be easily ignored by women who are a bit more confident, repeat offences by trolls online or people she has to work alongside invades her work environment and wears her down. This is why we're seeing so many women leave the tech industry. We need repercussions for damaging behaviour in the workplace and the wider industry. We need allies who aren't scared to point out the flaws in the system. We need to create environments that are empathetic to a diverse group, making people feel welcome and comfortable, levelling the playing field. And we need diverse leaders to break the white male-dominated culture and to educate and lead in their own way. Thank you for everything you're doing to make the tech industry a better place for women.